3 to 400 million men watch porn habitually in the West and India and in the CIS region, and 25% of these guys feel addicted to porn. In my estimation, at least 75 and as much as 95% of people who watch porn habitually experience some of the side effects that we're going to cover here. That means almost everybody would have a better life if they could just stop watching porn. You might ask the question, why is this a problem now? Internet. Before the internet, there was no easy way of accessing porn online. And with the introduction of smartphones, now we have porn free to access 24/7 in our pockets. So, in this video, I'm also gonna give you an action step. What can you do to start quitting porn right now? The very first step is to start experimenting. Do your sport activity or physical exercise while abstaining for porn for at least 48 to 72 hours to see what difference it makes. Chances are what you're going to see is you are able to focus significantly easier and you're gonna have a slightly better performance. So, what is this increased performance? What is this increased focus? So you might say, okay, I've heard that porn decreases testosterone, and when you go on NoFap, you'll have a testosterone boost. That is actually not true. The testosterone boost is only in one study, which is quite controversial, and it only lasts 1 week, and after that it goes back to the baseline normal level that you've had before quitting porn. Well, it is quite simple. Basically, your dopamine receptors are not receiving so much dopamine. Your system isn't flooded with dopamine anymore. So your body starts signaling that it would like some more dopamine. So how can you get more dopamine when not from porn? Because porn is one of the highest, ejaculation to porn is one of the highest dopamine spikes, if not the highest dopamine level that you can get in the world. Because of this massive dopamine spike, your dopamine receptors burn out. Your dopamine is still the same when you're ejaculating over and over again to porn movies. However, the receptors aren't receiving as much dopamine, they aren't as sensitive as for the first time or prior times. These receptors lose sensitivity the deeper you go in the rabbit hole. Basically, exercising with burnt out and overfed dopamine receptors is similar to exercising on a full stomach while in a food coma. I have had this experience as well. I started experimenting and I've gotten to a point where I was like, hey, I'm getting a better performance when I'm not jerking off every day. I might as well try and do a longer streak. And I did a 30-day experiment. That was my first experiment, which was longer term. And I was left with a bad taste in my mouth. I did not really notice any significant improvements in my life. Back then I was very confused. Why is that? I could not find an answer to it. However, looking back, it's very obvious. I've spent more than 12 years watching these comeback materials of different kind. Of course, a 30-day break is not really gonna make a big difference now, will it? So when I did my 30-day streak, my 30-day experiment, I could not have experienced the superpowers that people were talking about on the NoFap forums. So what these superpowers are, how do these superpowers work? I'm sure you've read about it if you have read up on NoFap, which is a kind of abstinence from porn and also any type of ejaculation except sex. These superpowers don't exist. There are no benefits of not watching porn. There are side effects of watching porn, and by stopping that activity, you will stop experiencing those side effects slowly as your neural networks, as your body and your mind starts healing. The best way of being is not abstinence from masturbation. Masturbation is a very neutral thing to do. You can just prove it by looking at your night emissions, because yes, abstinence from masturbation does have some problems. First off, the night emissions. But you can easily fix this by wearing 2 underwears or 2 boxer briefs. Also, when you ejaculate without porn, to your own thoughts, you will experience an increased happiness. You might experience amazing ideas and self-love when you are in your post-nut phase, which lasts about 1 hour. As I said, this testosterone study of you ejaculating and then having lower testosterone is extremely controversial, and I have read newer studies which have disproven this. Basically, there is a drop of testosterone which lasts about 1 hour. Also, ejaculating normally boosts the immune system. Problem with this, the problem with masturbation is it's extremely hard to resist porn. It is quite difficult if you have watched porn before and your neural networks has connected masturbation with porn to find a healthy, regulated frequency to masturbate. And on top of that, the cravings to watch porn while masturbating is over the top. It is extremely bad. There's a phrase called first urge that you have to deal with every single time until your brain is fully healed if you decide to masturbate, unless you have only watched porn for a couple of years. If you're a lifelong porn user, like most men are, like I was, it is going to take multiple years to get to a point where you can start rewiring your brain to think masturbation is good and porn is a different thing. Dr. Trish Lay has a lot of good information on rewiring your own brain and the neural nuances of how you can do this, but you don't need that right now. You might need that if you're further along on your journey of abstaining from porn. So a lot of people claim that porn addiction is just a psychological addiction and there are no physical signs. Okay, sorry about that. I had to take care of some university problems. Anyway, now it's the middle of summer and I'm still in my coat, so excuse me if I look a little sweaty. Let's talk about the second part of this video, which are the side effects of using. I highly recommend you to go through these symptoms and see which ones you have experienced in the past couple of years or however long you've been watching porn. Porn in some ways is like alcohol, so a lot of people can possibly regulate it, but it's never really gonna be a healthy vice. Alcohol is always gonna be toxic, and the same is true for high quality streaming videos of porn, of people having sex. So yeah, people can regulate it. This does not mean that these people who regulate properly don't experience some of the side effects that are the following. Shrunken frontal lobe, that's basically prefrontal cortex, you know, that's all the stuff that you want to do. So prefrontal cortex is important when we are talking about self-control, when we are talking about behavior, chosen behavior. As far as I understand, porn use shrinks the prefrontal cortex. So you get more brain fog, your decisions are gonna be less sharp, and you'll have worse emotional recognition abilities when you're talking in social environments. On top of this, another thing that shrinks is your brain reward system. Porn is different because porn rewards you with the highest dopamine spike that you can possibly get from any of these dopaminergic vices like TikTok, Netflix, YouTube Shorts, etc. Porn gives you a massive spike. If you repeat this over and over, your dopamine receptors will be like, okay, we are getting way too much, this is literally unhealthy. We are going to cut back on our own ability to process these dopamine rewards. So the more and more you use porn, the less and less rewarding it feels. This is why Fapping entropy is a thing. Fapping entropy is when you watch porn on a regular basis, chances are the porn you're gonna watch is going to get more and more violent or kinky or edgy in some way. Because at some point you can't rely on your dopamine receptors to give you the reward. You have to use other channels to make you feel pleasure. One of these ways is adrenaline. And I think this is one of the reasons why so many people watch kinky porn, so many people watch violent porn, and this is the reason, because your dopamine receptors are not letting through this extreme dopamine spike over and over and over again, they downregulate, so you need other things like adrenaline to compensate. So a shrunken prefrontal cortex will cause brain fog. It will also cause your decisions to be less sharp. You will have less ability to recognize other people's emotions in your environment. You will lose the willingness, the vigor to take calculated risks in life. And this is what fucks you up really badly. So this is what hurts you the most out of all of these things. Because if you stop taking calculated risks, you will stop getting rewards as much as if you were taking all those risks. If you have this symptom more, you will suffer significantly more. If this symptom isn't typical of your porn use, your porn use will be less destructive in this way of halting the advance of your life's progress, basically. So, if you have a shrunken frontal lobe, usually your vigor drops and lethargy goes up. Increased lethargy and decreased vigor causes symptoms that are similar to ADHD, especially the type of ADHD that is not hyperactive, just attention deficit disorder. So you're not like moving around all the time, you're more like relaxed, and you cannot control your mind, where your mind wanders. Another set of symptoms are symptoms that are similar to anxiety. You become a lot more reactive, a lot more tamer, and you start to procrastinate, you start to daydream, you start to develop issues with anxiety and with self-esteem issues. So for example, eye contact becomes a little bit awkward for you. You lose the ability to have good conversations that flow effortlessly with other people, especially women or men, depending on what type of scumbag material you're watching on the internet. And as a result of this, or in general, a lowered vigor can cause symptoms that are similar to depression. Well, we can call it depression, it doesn't matter, because the whole point of this is you can decrease these side effects and eventually eliminate them if you stop watching porn regularly. Depression, stagnation, and idleness are usually telltale signs of a habitual porn user. This is the same type of guy who says he's an introvert because he's shutting himself in as he gets into a depression loop where, yeah, I'm depressed, so I'm not gonna go out, which makes me more depressed, so I'm not gonna go out, which makes me more depressed. This way, a habitual porn user will be a shut-in and eventually will be developing signs of depression. Yeah, and obviously, without vigor, you're not gonna be striving, you're not gonna be living up to your potential. So even if you're a habitual user who watches porn twice, 3 times a week, you are not reaching your full potential here, and some of these symptoms will be typical of you. So you will experience some of these symptoms, obviously to a lesser extent than someone, for example, who watches porn twice a day, but you will still have a benefit if you stop watching porn. The thing that causes all of these side effects is the dopamine spike that you get from watching high resolution sex tapes on the internet. This is the problem. So things that will not give you as big of a dopamine spike are fine. For example, watching pictures of women who are not having sex, for example, will give you a significantly smaller dopamine spike. Or just doing it the old-fashioned way and not even watching any picture will give you an even smaller dopamine spike while giving you the benefits of masturbation. So what I talked about earlier were the physiological parts of the side effects of watching porn. Now let's get on to the psychological part of the side effects. Number 1 is the altered sexual taste. So when you experience this, it's like you think it's normal that your sexual taste is a little bit more edgy, a little bit more kinky, a little bit more extreme, but in reality, this is a side effect of porn. This is very easily noticeable when you talk about fapantropy, which is like you have a baseline of intensity of sexual media that you watch, and every time you masturbate on the websites, it becomes more and more extreme. Why do you need more extreme media? is because your dopamine receptors get burnt out and they cannot receive the flood of dopamine that you are giving them. Basically, porn is a very artificial type of dopamine spike, and when you expose your body over and over again to these spikes, basically these receptors burn out and they will not function properly. They will not take in all the dopamine that you're giving them. They will, as you would say, adapt to the higher levels of dopamine, and they will recognize it as a normal amount of dopamine. So in order to get a similar amount of dopamine feeling in your system, your body can utilize adrenaline, and this is where these extreme versions of sexual media come into play. Right. And also, when you have an altered sexual taste, sexual relations with your partner will not stay the same. The biggest problem that most of the people who are looking to quit porn experience is PED. Basically, you can't function sexually when you're with your partner because you watched all these extreme versions of people having sex, and now you have trained your body to respond to extreme versions of sex. This is completely unnatural, and this doesn't only hurt you as the user of these products on the internet, but also hurts your partner. They will have lower self-worth as a direct cause of your porn habit. Another side effect of watching porn habitually or being addicted to pornographic material is real girls just don't seem as attractive anymore. Basically, as you walk down the street, you will have less urge to go up to a beautiful girl that you find very attractive, or you will not find any girls attractive. This is a very common side effect of porn use. As an extreme version of this is basically zero sexual desire towards any woman. And this is when you have watched porn for decades or for years, habitually or addictively. Basically, addictively means you watch sporadically without structure, and you may watch porn multiple times a day if you are on a relapse, or if you're not watching anything, then you may go only a couple of days without porn. Watching porn habitually means you watch porn in a structured way regularly. And this has to be more than a couple of times a week, as part of your daily routine, for example. And obviously, with an altered sexual taste, you will see a higher likelihood of infidelity. Although some people may not experience this at all, people with lower libidos may not crave other women. They just flatline and they are not interested in any woman, as discussed earlier in the previous side effect. However, people with higher libidos might experience the desire, an urge to cheat or to have multiple partners at the same time. And obviously this leads to a higher rate of divorce amongst people who watch porn as well. Another side effect of watching porn is you will have a lowered ability to read social cues, meaning you will not be able to see the nuances when talking, for example, to girls or to friends. You will be hard pressed to see their true reaction and feel secure about receiving that information. You will just not be able to recognize their little social cues. Maybe a good example to this would be you're not looking them in the eye, so you have worse eye contact because you have worse self-esteem, and therefore you will not be able to connect with them truly. Therefore, when you're talking to them, you won't be able to receive as much information as to how they perceive your story. When, for example, dating or approaching girls, it will be harder for you to understand which girls like you and which girls don't like you. And this is a very debilitating side effect, because this way you will be unable to pick a partner, or you might be very anxious about picking a partner, as you don't know if they really like you or they are just tolerating you. Obviously, different people have different stack of side effects. People who are regular users, people who are habitual users might have less extreme side effects. Other people who are just watching porn occasionally, people who only watch it at a frequency that would mirror the frequency of masturbation, is kind of considered safe. Although I do think watching porn is bad in general. It's like drinking alcohol. You can't really have a healthy amount of alcohol. Any alcohol is bad for your immune system, for your health, and any amount of porn is bad for your brain. For example, I experienced an insane amount of brain fog lifting when I was recovering from porn habit. I did not hear or read anything about this. This was something that was specific to me, and you might have your own set of side effects. And if you have some weird side effects, for example, I have a side effect that animals may be friendlier towards me after a couple of months without porn. And this is very weird. I don't know if it's like just placebo or something. It is probably an indirect cause, having something to do with the way I manage my body language. Let me know if you have any weird side effects in the comments down below. I'd be very interested to hear what you guys have experienced while abstaining from porn. So these were the side effects of watching porn. And keep watching this guide. I will talk about how to break the habit for the first 30 days. What is a good strategy to do when you are just starting off? Maybe you have had the habit for decades or for years and you wish to stop watching porn. It's not as easy as it seems, but it's also a lot easier than doing it alone. So stick with me through this guide and see you in the next one. Informal law that Fap Entropy says that the intensity of porn you watched when you left off will be the type of porn you will watch within a week when you relapse.